Imagine standing in a palace so grand that even kings would envy it. Gold-trimmed walls, chandeliers bigger than cars, servants moving like shadows, making sure everything stays perfect. In this world, money isn't just power, it's everything. And no one understands that better than Sheikh Omar, the ruthless billionaire who built his empire from nothing. He's a man who never smiles, never jokes, and never, ever makes a decision without a reason. So when he stands before his family, 100 wealthy guests watching, his voice echoing through the marble halls, and says the words, "My sister Amira will marry him." Star. The entire room stops breathing. Amira, the crown jewel of the family. The woman every billionaire's son has tried, and failed, to win over. Educated in the best universities, fluent in multiple languages, elegant, graceful, the kind of woman people compare to princesses. She was supposed to marry a prince, a CEO, a man with a yacht, a private jet, and an empire of his own. That was the plan. But instead, her brother just announced she's marrying a man who doesn't even have shoes. A beggar, not just poor, destitute. The kind of man people step over on sidewalks, tossing him a coin without even looking at his face. His clothes are worn, his beard unkempt, his hands rough from years of struggle. He has no business, no fortune, no title. Nothing. A man who sleeps under bridges and wakes up with the sun because he has nowhere else to go. And Sheikh Omar, the most powerful, most respected man in the country, is standing here, calmly telling the world that his only sister will marry this man. "Brother, you must be joking." Amira's voice barely comes out as a whisper, her lips trembling. "Number the wedding is in 3 days," Omar says, his voice cold, final, leaving no room for argument. The explosion happens instantly. "You can't be serious," her mother gasps, clutching her pearls like she might faint. "This is an insult to our family," her uncle shouts, slamming his hand on the table. "Amira deserves better." A cousin screams, looking ready to throw hands. The guests whisper, trying to make sense of what they just heard. A waiter drops a tray, the sound of breaking glass barely registering over the chaos. The family lawyer, an old man who has seen everything, sits down and starts wiping his forehead like he's just realized his job might be over. This is madness. And then there's Amira, standing in the middle of it all, her perfect life crashing down around her. Just a week ago, she was rejecting marriage proposals from men who sent her diamond bracelets as gifts. Just a week ago, she was sipping coffee in 5-star hotels, thinking about what dress she'd wear to her engagement party. And now? Now she's being told she'll marry a man who probably doesn't even own a toothbrush. Her nails dig into her palm. This can't be real. Her brother is strict, sure. Controlling, definitely. But he loves her. He wouldn't do this. He wouldn't throw her into the arms of a nobody. There has to be a reason, a hidden motive, a game she's not seeing yet. But the more she searches Omar's face, the more she realizes. This isn't a joke. He's dead serious. And the worst part, the beggar, the man she's supposed to marry, says nothing. He doesn't look shocked, doesn't protest, doesn't beg for mercy. He just stands there silent, watching her with unreadable eyes. Like he already knows something she doesn't. Like he's waiting for her to figure it out. What is going on here? Is this some twisted test? A punishment? A hidden deal no one knows about? Or is there something even bigger at play, something no one in this room, not even Amira herself, could ever see coming? One thing is for sure, this is no ordinary arranged marriage. And when the truth finally comes out, no one's life will ever be the same again. To understand the madness of this arranged marriage, we need to step into the lives of the 3 people at the heart of it: Sheikh Omar, Amira, and the mysterious beggar, Zaid. 3 people from 3 completely different worlds, now bound together by a decision no one can comprehend. First, there's Sheikh Omar, the man who made the impossible happen, a self-made billionaire who rose from nothing, turning dust into gold, building an empire that stretches across continents. A man whose name commands fear in boardrooms and respect in royal circles. If you cross him in business, you disappear from the industry. If you cross him in life, well, let's just say no one dares. But behind the power, behind the sharp suits, the private jets, and the wealth, there's one thing Omar values more than money: his family, especially Amira, his only sister, his responsibility, the one person he swore to protect, no matter what. So why would he do this to her? Why humiliate her? Why force her into a life beneath her status? Some say he's lost his mind. Others whisper that he's punishing Amira for something. But the truth? The truth is locked inside his cold, calculating eyes. Because Omar never makes a move without a reason, and this is his most mysterious move yet. Then there's Amira, elegant, poised, and raised in luxury, a woman who has never known struggle, never washed her own clothes, never lived a life outside privilege. The world calls her perfect. Men compete for her attention, bringing her gifts worth millions, hoping to win her heart. But Amira has always believed in love, real love, the kind that's more than wealth and status. So when Omar forces her into this marriage, it isn't just an insult, it's a betrayal by the one person she trusted most. How could he do this? How could he throw her to a man with no name, no fortune, no future, a beggar, a nobody? But what Amira doesn't know is that sometimes the people we call nobodies are the ones hiding the biggest secrets. And then there's Zaid, the man at the center of it all, the beggar who doesn't beg, the man whose silence speaks louder than 1,000 words. He's not angry, not desperate, not even grateful. When Omar announced the marriage, he didn't bow, didn't thank him, didn't react at all. He just stood there, calm, like he had been expecting this all along. Who is he? Where did he come from? Why does he carry himself like a man who's seen more than he lets on? People assume they know him because they see his torn clothes and dirty hands. But what they don't see is the way he looks at the world, like he knows something they don't, like he's playing a game only he understands, like this marriage is part of something much, much bigger. 3 lives, 3 fates colliding in a way no one expected. And as the wedding day creeps closer, one thing is becoming terrifyingly clear. This isn't just an arranged marriage. This is a test, a game, a mystery waiting to be unraveled. And when the truth comes out, it will change everything. The news spread like wildfire. In the halls of the Sheikh's palace, in the lavish hotels where billionaires gathered, in the private lounges of the country's elite, one headline dominated every conversation. Arab billionaire's sister to marry a beggar. The reactions? Explosive. Socialites whispered in disbelief. Business moguls scoffed, calling it a cruel joke. Suitors who had once lined up for Amira, offering fortunes just for her hand, now felt humiliated, replaced by a man who had nothing. The internet was in flames, with endless theories flooding social media. Some called it a publicity stunt. Others believed it was a punishment, a disgrace, a scandal that would stain the Sheikh's family name forever. But in the grand palace where it all began, one place was more chaotic than anywhere else. Amira's home. And inside it, a storm was brewing. "You have lost your mind, Omar." The walls shook as Amira's mother, a woman of elegance and grace, forgot all about dignity and screamed at her son. She stood in her silk robe, diamonds glittering on her fingers, fury burning in her eyes. "This is not just a mistake. This is a disaster, a scandal. How dare you do this to your own sister?" Omar sat in his chair unbothered, calm as ever, like he was discussing business, not his sister's future. "It is done," he said, voice sharp, final. "The wedding is in 2 days." 2 days, 2 days. His mother's hands shook. "You expect my daughter, the pride of this family, to marry a street rat? A man who doesn't even own a pair of decent shoes? Tell me, Omar, have you gone completely insane? Or is this your twisted way of destroying your own family?" Omar didn't flinch, didn't argue. He simply stood, adjusted the cuff of his designer sleeve, and turned to leave. "You will understand soon enough," he said. "Until then, prepare for the wedding." Upstairs, in her luxurious bedroom, Amira sat in silence. The gold-framed mirror in front of her reflected a woman she no longer recognized. Just days ago, she had been the most sought-after bride in the country, a woman with suitors richer than kings, men who would build palaces just to win her favor. Now she was nothing but a pawn in a cruel game she didn't understand. "This can't be real," she whispered. "This has to be a nightmare." Her fingers clenched the edge of her vanity. She should have been getting ready for a grand engagement. Instead, she was being forced to marry a man she had never met, a man who had nothing. A beggar? Her mind raced. There had to be a way out, a loophole, a way to stop this madness before it was too late. "Omar can't do this to me. He won't. He's testing me. That's it. He wants to see how far I'll go before I break." But deep down, she knew. This wasn't a test. This was real, and there was no escape. Across the city, in a small, dimly lit alley where the air smelled of dust and forgotten dreams, a man sat on an old wooden crate. His clothes were torn, his hands calloused, his face hidden behind a rough beard. And yet, there was something different about him, something unsettling. Zaid, the beggar at the heart of the storm, wasn't panicking, wasn't overwhelmed, wasn't even surprised. He simply sat there, staring at the ring box in his palm, running his fingers over the smooth surface. The ring inside? A simple silver band. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive. But the way he looked at it, it was as if he was holding something far more valuable than gold. He took a deep breath, eyes closing for just a moment, then a slow smile curled on his lips. A knowing smile, a dangerous smile. "So, it begins," he murmured. With every passing second, the tension grew. The media prepared for the most scandalous wedding in history. The elite whispered, eager to see how far this madness would go. The family fought, desperate to stop the inevitable. And Amira, she stood before her wedding dress, staring at the lace and silk, realizing the horrifying truth. In 2 days, she would walk down the aisle. She would marry a man she had never met, a beggar. And what scared her most was the feeling that somehow, in some way, this was exactly what was meant to happen. But why? Why would a billionaire force his sister to marry a man with nothing? What secret is Zaid hiding? And most importantly, who is really in control of this game? The answers are coming. But when the truth finally comes out, it will shock the world. Stop. Before you judge this story, before you assume you know how it ends, ask yourself this. Why would a billionaire, a man with limitless power, force his only sister to marry a beggar? What secret is so dangerous, so powerful, that he would risk his family's reputation, his sister's future, and his own legacy to make it happen? And most importantly, who is really being played in this twisted game? Because I promise you, nothing is as it seems. The grand hall of the Sheikh's estate had never been so quiet. The usual symphony of wealth, the clinking of expensive glassware, the whispers of high society, the rhythmic clicks of designer heels on marble floors was absent. Instead, there was silence. Heavy, unbearable. Amira sat on a velvet chair, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. Her long, manicured fingers tapped against the armrest, a slow, controlled rhythm that betrayed her storming thoughts. Across from her, standing awkwardly on the pristine floor, was the man she was being forced to marry. Zaid, the beggar. Her eyes scanned him, analyzing, searching. He wore simple clothes. Too simple. A plain white shirt, dark pants, no jewelry, no expensive watch. Nothing about him belonged in this world. His hair was slightly messy, his hands rough. But his eyes were what unsettled her most. Because they weren't the eyes of a desperate man. They weren't pleading. They weren't grateful. They weren't even nervous. They were calm, too calm. So, Amira finally spoke, her voice sharp, slicing through the silence. You're the man my brother thinks is worthy of me. Zaid didn't flinch, didn't blink. Instead, something unexpected happened. He smirked. I didn't know worthiness was a requirement, he said, voice low, smooth, almost lazy. From what I understand, you don't have a choice. Amira inhaled sharply, her nails digging into the fabric of the chair. Arrogant. This beggar was arrogant. You think this is funny? She snapped. Do you have any idea who I am? Zaid tilted his head slightly, his smirk widening, like he was enjoying this more than he should. I know exactly who you are, princess, he murmured. The question is, do you? The air between them thickened. A challenge had just been thrown, unspoken yet undeniable. Amira had spent her whole life being admired, praised, chased by powerful men. But this one? This man with nothing? He wasn't chasing her. He was watching her, studying her, like he knew something she didn't, like he was waiting for her to figure it out. She stood, her heels clicking against the marble, stepping closer. If he wanted a game, she'd give him one. You should know something, Zaid, she said, voice laced with ice. I may have been forced into this, but that doesn't mean I will accept it. You are beneath me. You will always be beneath me. She expected him to lower his head, to look ashamed, to show some sign of submission, but he didn't. Instead, he leaned in slightly, his voice dropping just above a whisper. We'll see about that. 2 days until the wedding. 2 days until the world would witness the most shocking union in high society history. But right now, there was a different battle happening. Amira versus Zaid. Two people from two completely different worlds standing inches apart, locked in a silent war. Neither willing to back down. Neither willing to break first. But one of them will. And when it happens, everything will change. What happens next? Does Amira find a way to escape? Or does Zaid have a secret that will make her rethink everything? Stay tuned, because the real story hasn't even started yet. Before we dive deeper into this wild ride, let me remind you, things are not always what they seem, especially when you think you know the story. We've all heard the fairy tales. Rich man meets poor woman, they fall in love, and live happily ever after. But what happens when the roles are flipped? When the prince has nothing but silence, and the princess has everything to lose? What happens when the beggar isn't a beggar at all? Buckle up, because this is where things get really interesting. You might think you figured it out by now, but trust me, you haven't. Not even close. Zaid, the beggar. On the outside, he's nothing more than a man with no future, no status, and no wealth. But what if I told you that Zaid's life was a lie? That everything you've been led to believe about him was part of a much bigger plan? The truth is, Zaid isn't a beggar, not in the way you think. The man standing before Amira, sitting in the gutter, begging for scraps. He's not what he seems. He's not homeless. He's not some random man plucked from the streets to make this marriage a twisted spectacle. Number Zaid is playing a dangerous game that no one, not even Amira, could understand. And the question is, why? Let me take you back a few years. Back to a time when Zaid wasn't living on the streets. Back to when he was someone powerful, someone feared. Before the rags, the unkempt beard, the grimy clothes. Before he made his move on Amira. You see, Zaid wasn't always a nobody. He was the son of a powerful politician, a man who controlled millions of dollars, who made deals with world leaders, who walked the halls of government like a king. His family's name? Well, let's just say you would have recognized it if you weren't so busy looking down on beggars, but everything changed when his father's enemies came after him. Enemies who didn't care who he was, who his family was, or what kind of power he wielded. Zaid's world was torn apart in a single night. His family's wealth disappeared, his name became synonymous with scandal, and everything he knew was destroyed. Zaid faked his own death. He staged it perfectly, disappearing from the world's eyes and taking on a new identity. The beggar who no one noticed. Why? Because he needed to rebuild. He needed to get close to the one person who could help him exact revenge. The one person who was unaware of the storm brewing around her. Amira. And the truth? Zaid never wanted to marry her. Not in the way you think. Let me make something crystal clear. Zaid wasn't here to fall in love with Amira. He didn't care about the money, the status, or the family name. No, he was here for one reason and one reason only. Revenge. Sheikh Omar, the man who'd forced this arranged marriage on his sister, was the very man responsible for destroying Zaid's life. Omar had been the architect of his family's downfall, a rival who used politics, power, and dirty deals to bring Zaid's world crashing down. Now Zaid was going to make him pay. And Amira? Well, she was just a pawn in his game. But here's where things get tricky, because Amira, despite her anger, despite her confusion, is smart. She's sharp. She's starting to piece things together. She's beginning to see that Zaid isn't who he appears to be. The question is, will she figure it out in time? Will she uncover the truth before it's too late? Or will she become a victim of the game Zaid is playing, just like her brother once was? As the wedding day nears, Amira's mind is racing. She knows something is wrong. She knows there's more to Zaid than meets the eye. But what can she do? Her brother's decision is final. The power of her family is overwhelming. And yet, every time she looks at Zaid, every time she meets his unreadable gaze, she feels like there's something lurking behind his calm exterior. Could it be that Zaid isn't just playing the role of a beggar? Could it be that he's playing her too? The wedding draws closer. The world waits for the spectacle. But inside, Amira's heart is filled with dread. Because one thing is certain, the truth is about to come crashing down. Stay tuned, because the story is far from over. And when the real game begins, everything will change. You thought you knew how this story would go, didn't you? The powerful sheikh's sister, marrying a beggar, becoming the talk of the town. You thought you had it all figured out, but let me stop you right there. Because the biggest twist of all is just about to hit, and trust me, it will blow your mind. Hold on tight, because you've never seen a wedding like this before. But first, let me remind you, no matter how much we think we know, life always has a way of surprising us. And today the truth will be revealed, the lies will unravel, and the world will see the marriage that no one expected. The wedding that wasn't just about a girl and a beggar, but about power, revenge, and something far more dangerous. The day had arrived. The grandest wedding the kingdom had ever seen was about to unfold. The palace was buzzing with excitement. The guests, the media, the curious onlookers, everyone had gathered, eager to witness the spectacle that was the union of Amira and Zaid. But what no one knew was that this wasn't just any wedding. This was a carefully orchestrated battle, a showdown between the past and the future, between a family's legacy and a man who had nothing left to lose. Inside the palace, Amira paced nervously in her bridal suite. The luxurious gown she was wearing, adorned with diamonds and intricate lace, felt heavy on her shoulders. She stared at herself in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back at her. She wasn't just a bride anymore. She was a prisoner of her family's legacy, a pawn in a game she had no say in. "What have I gotten myself into?" she whispered, voice breaking slightly. And then there was Zaid, the man who had been nothing but a shadow in her life, a man she had been forced to marry, a man who was now standing at the altar. His gaze was cold, determined. He stood tall, looking like a king in disguise, and Amira couldn't help but feel a shiver run down her spine. She had underestimated him. All along she had thought he was weak, nothing more than a pawn in her brother's twisted plan. But as she stared at him from across the room, she knew. Zaid wasn't here to marry her. He wasn't here to be her husband. No, he was here to play a much bigger game. And today the game would be won. The ceremony began, with Amira walking down the aisle, her heart racing, her mind spinning. The guests whispered among themselves, unsure of what was happening, but eager for the show to unfold. The priest began speaking, but Amira's attention wasn't on him. It was on Zaid. Zaid stood there unmoving, his expression unreadable. And then, as if on cue, something unexpected happened. Something that no one had anticipated. Zaid stepped forward. His voice, calm but powerful, cut through the air. I cannot marry her. The room went silent. Every single person in that grand hall froze. Amira's breath caught in her throat. Her heart skipped a beat. The guests stared, waiting for an explanation. The Sheikh's family was in shock. Omar stood up, eyes widening in disbelief. Zaid's words echoed through the room as he continued, slowly, deliberately. I'm not the man you think I am. I didn't come here to marry Amira. I came here for justice, for revenge. Amira's mind raced. Her heart pounded. This wasn't part of the plan. She didn't know what was happening. Zaid turned to face her directly. His eyes locked with hers, and for the first time, Amira saw something. Something raw. Something dangerous in them. You don't know the full story, Amira. Your brother, your family, they destroyed everything I had. They took everything from me, and now I'm here to make them pay. The crowd gasped. A few whispered in disbelief. Some thought it was a prank. But those who knew the truth about Zaid's past, those who knew the game he had been playing, understood the weight of his words. The sheikh, who had been standing proudly at the altar, his face now turning red with anger, finally spoke, his voice shaking. You dare defy me, Zaid? Do you know who I am? Zaid didn't flinch. He didn't even look at him. He kept his focus on Amira, his gaze never wavering. I know exactly who you are, Omar, and I know what you did to me, to my family, and I'm not afraid of you anymore. But just as it seemed like chaos would erupt, something incredible happened. Amira, her mind racing, her heart torn between anger and confusion, stepped forward. She walked up to Zaid, her heels clicking on the marble floor, her eyes filled with determination. If you think I'm just some pawn in this twisted game, she said, her voice strong, then you're wrong. I don't care about your revenge. I don't care about your power. But I care about the truth. The guests were silent. The sheikh was speechless. Amira turned to her brother, her gaze hardening. Omar, this marriage is over. And just like that, the game was won. The power shifted. The truth came out. This wedding wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't about a beggar and a princess. It was about two people discovering who they really were, facing the truth, no matter how ugly it was. But the story isn't over yet. This is just the beginning. What happens next? Stay tuned, because the real war is about to start. So what's next for Amira and Zaid? Will they team up to take down Omar? Or will the darkness from their past tear them apart? Don't miss the next part. Subscribe now to stay in the loop. Because trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next. You thought you knew the story. You thought the wedding was the climax, the big finish. But oh, this is only the beginning of a much darker game. The fallout from Zaid's confession is still unfolding, and trust me, it's going to be more dramatic than anything you've seen so far. Hold on tight, because we're about to witness the rise of a new power and a betrayal no one saw coming. The tension in the air was suffocating. As Zaid and Amira stood side by side, the grand palace that had once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a battlefield. The guests had all but disappeared, their whispers turning into silence. The sheikh's family was in turmoil, Omar's face twisted with rage and disbelief. But the most surprising thing? Zaid wasn't done yet. He wasn't just here to take down Omar. He had other plans. He had his eyes set on something bigger, something more dangerous than revenge. He wanted it all: power, control, and Amira's loyalty. Amira, still in shock from the revelations, found herself standing between two worlds. She had been forced into a marriage she didn't want, only to discover that her brother was a monster who had destroyed Zaid's life. She had the chance to finally take a stand, to help Zaid destroy Omar and rebuild his life. But what if Zaid wasn't the hero he seemed to be? What if he had his own dark secrets, his own betrayals waiting to be uncovered? Amira's heart raced as she thought about the dangerous path she was about to walk. The man who had claimed to love her, or at least use her for his revenge, was now someone she couldn't trust completely. And yet, she felt a strange pull toward him, a pull that made her question everything she thought she knew. Zaid, for his part, was playing his cards carefully. He had been patient, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But now, with the sheikh weakened and the wedding scandal making headlines, Zaid knew it was time to put his real plan into action, and this time there was no going back. It was only a matter of time before the world began to notice the shift in power. Omar, the once untouchable sheikh, was now in the public eye for all the wrong reasons. His reputation was in ruins, his empire crumbling. The very man who had orchestrated Amira's forced marriage was now a man on the brink of losing everything. But Zaid was a man reborn, a man who had been crushed, humiliated, and broken. only to rise from the ashes like a phoenix. He had waited for this moment, the moment when Omar's downfall would be complete. And the moment was here. With Amira by his side, or so he thought, Zaid set his sights on the heart of Omar's empire. His first move, to take control of the Sheikh's business operations, to strip him of his power, piece by piece. But Zaid knew that to truly take everything from Omar, he needed to go beyond business. He needed to destroy his enemy on a personal level, and that meant turning to Amira, because she was Omar's most prized possession. Amira had thought she was in control. She had thought she had the power to take down her brother, to stand up for what was right. But now as she stood beside Zaid, she began to wonder if she was just another pawn in his game. Zaid's plans were unfolding before her eyes, but something didn't sit right. She had trusted him. She had believed that together they could take down the man who had ruined their lives. But as Zaid's plans became clearer, Amira realized that Zaid wasn't interested in justice. He was interested in power, in taking control, and in using her as the final piece of his puzzle. Amira's heart pounded as she realized the truth. Zaid hadn't come to her for love or even for revenge. He had come for her loyalty. He had come to manipulate her, to use her as leverage against Omar. And now Amira had to make a choice. She could either stand by Zaid, help him take everything from her brother, and risk losing herself in the process, or she could turn against him and risk losing everything else. It was a decision that would change everything. In the shadows of the palace, hidden away from the world's watchful eyes, the final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. Zaid, with his eyes set on the throne, was ready to make his move. But this wasn't just about power. It was about making the ultimate statement, about showing the world that even the most untouchable man could be brought down. And as the day of reckoning approached, the question on everyone's mind was, what would Amira do? Would she side with the man who had promised her revenge? Or would she fight to protect the family she once loved? The next move is hers. The final battle is about to begin, and the stakes have never been higher. But the real question is, who will Amira trust in the end? Will she stand with Zaid? Or will she choose to betray him? And in doing so, will she destroy everything she's worked for? Stay tuned, because you won't believe what happens next. Want to see how this all ends? Don't miss the next chapter. Subscribe now, because the twists and turns are just getting started. Okay, I know you've been on the edge of your seat waiting for this moment, and trust me, you're not ready for what's about to go down. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. You're about to witness the final twist in this saga, and trust me, you do not want to miss it. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what happens next will leave your jaw on the floor. The atmosphere in the palace was heavy. It felt like the world itself had stopped, waiting for Amira's decision. The beautiful, luxurious walls of her family's home suddenly felt cold. The grandeur of her brother's empire, now tainted by betrayal, was nothing more than a prison she had built for herself. Zaid stood beside her, calm as ever, his eyes intense with determination. But Amira wasn't so sure anymore. She wasn't sure about Zaid, about her brother, or even about herself. For days she had wrestled with her feelings. Zaid had pulled her into his world, made her believe in the revenge that would set them both free. But now, standing at the precipice of losing everything, Amira knew something deeper had been at play all along. Was Zaid using her, or was he really the man he portrayed himself to be? Was the man who had sworn to avenge her the same man who could destroy her own family without hesitation? She stared at him, her heart torn between the person she had grown to trust and the man who had manipulated her from the very beginning. Amira, you have to understand, Zaid's voice broke through her thoughts. This is bigger than you and me. This is about everything I lost. This is about taking back what was stolen from me. I need you, Amira, to help me finish what we started. Together we can bring Omar to his knees. But Amira, her emotions swirling, her mind clouded with doubts, turned away. She couldn't do this. She couldn't betray the only family she had left, not even after all he had done. But her brother had ruined everything. Her decision wasn't just about Zaid, it was about what kind of person she wanted to be. Did she want to be a puppet in Zaid's revenge plot, or did she want to break free and choose her own path? The tension built as Amira slowly walked toward the edge of the grand balcony, gazing out over the city that had once been her home. This was it, her moment to make a choice that would change everything. Amira's heart pounded as she turned to face Zaid. The moment had arrived. She had made her decision, but the cost was high. It wasn't just her loyalty that was at stake. It was everything she had known. Her family, her future, even her own identity had been torn apart in the battle for power. Zaid, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I can't do this. I can't be a part of your revenge. But that doesn't mean I'm not ready to fight back. You've been lying to me, and I can't let you tear everything down, even if it means losing myself in the process. The words hung in the air like a heavy storm cloud. Zaid's eyes flickered with disbelief for just a moment, before hardening with determination. You're making a mistake, he growled. I thought you understood, Amira. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about redemption. It was about me taking back everything I lost. But Amira stood firm, her gaze unwavering. Maybe it's you who doesn't understand. You think you can win by destroying everything, but I won't be a part of it. And just like that, the game changed. Amira had chosen the hardest path, the path of defiance. She wasn't going to be Zaid's pawn. She wasn't going to help him destroy her brother, no matter how broken he had made her life. Zaid stood still, staring at her. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. But then, the world moved again. The battle was just beginning, and both of them knew it. But just when you think it's over, when you think the pieces are finally in place, you realize that the real danger is just around the corner. Omar, the man who had started all of this, was far from finished. He had been watching, waiting, and now he was ready to strike back. He wasn't about to let his sister defy him. He wasn't going to let Zaid's revenge tear apart the empire he had built. Omar's next move would be devastating, and Amira and Zaid were about to face something even darker than the shadows of their past. This war isn't over. It's only just begun. What will happen next? Will Amira and Zaid form an unlikely alliance? Will they take on Omar together, or will betrayal tear them apart? You won't believe the shocking turn of events that's about to unfold. Don't miss the next chapter of this insane journey. Subscribe now so you don't miss out. Because trust me, you're going to want to know what happens next. Want more drama? More twists? Hit that subscribe button and let's dive into the next shocking chapter together. All right, you've stuck with us this long, and let me tell you, the next chapter is going to blow your mind. If you're not already subscribed, then now's the time. We're about to dive into the final showdown, where everything's on the line. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. So hit that subscribe button because this roller coaster is far from over. Let's get into it. The palace was silent. The tension was so thick, it was almost suffocating. Amira stood at the edge of it all, the weight of her decisions crushing her. Her brother, the man who had raised her, betrayed her, and used her, was about to make his final move. Zaid, the man who had once seemed like her savior, was now a dangerous force that threatened to destroy everything. But in the midst of all this chaos, one thing was crystal clear. This was the final battle. The battle for power. The battle for control of everything they had ever known. Zaid was not just a beggar anymore. He was a king in the making, and Omar was in his way. No one could stop it now. Zaid had calculated his every move, but Omar, the sheikh, was not one to back down easily. He wasn't going to let his empire crumble without a fight. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about survival. And if he had to destroy everyone in his path to protect his legacy, he would do it. Amira, caught between these two men, had no choice but to watch as the storm raged around her. She knew what they were both capable of. She knew what they were willing to sacrifice to win. And as the stakes grew higher, she was faced with one heartbreaking question. Could she survive this? Could anyone survive the battle that was coming? Zaid, standing tall in the grand hall, his eyes cold as ice, was ready for the final confrontation. He had been patient, calculating. Every move, every word had been planned. But this final showdown, the ultimate face-off with Omar, would require more than just strategy. It would require strength. Strength to face the man who had destroyed his life and taken everything from him. Omar, Zaid said, his voice steady but filled with an intensity that sent chills down the sheikh's spine. You've had your reign, you've made your empire, but it ends today. It ends with me. The sheikh's lips curled into a tight smile, one filled with venom and disbelief. His world was collapsing, and he could feel it. The once untouchable leader, now standing before the very man he had tried to destroy, was being brought to his knees. Amira, watching from the sidelines, couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. This wasn't just about power anymore. This was about pride, about two men trying to prove who was stronger, who was more ruthless. And in the end, it wasn't the throne or the riches that mattered. It was their egos, and that could be deadly. Just as it seemed the battle between Zaid and Omar was about to reach its peak, something unexpected happened. A figure emerged from the shadows, and with it, an announcement that would change everything. A new player had entered the game. It was Amira. Yes, you heard me right. Amira, the woman who had been caught between these two men, now stood before them, her face a mask of determination. Enough, she declared, her voice echoing through the hall. This fight is over. The room fell silent. Zaid and Omar both turned to face her, confusion and surprise written across their faces. But Amira wasn't finished. Her eyes filled with fire locked onto her brothers. She wasn't the helpless princess anymore. She wasn't just a pawn in their twisted game of power. She had taken control of her own destiny. You both think you're playing for the throne, she said, her voice strong. But what you're fighting for isn't power. It's destruction. And I'm done being a part of it. I'm done watching you tear everything down for your egos. You've lost me, and you've lost my loyalty. Zaid's jaw clenched. Omar's eyes narrowed. This wasn't part of the plan, but Amira wasn't backing down. She had made her choice, and now the stakes were higher than ever. What happened next was something no one could have predicted. Amira, standing at the center of the palace, turned her back on both Zayd and Omar. She walked away from the fight, from the chaos, from everything that had torn her life apart. Zayd and Omar stood there, stunned, unable to believe what had just transpired. They had been so consumed by their own thirst for power that they hadn't seen the true threat. The real enemy wasn't each other. It was their own pride, their own selfishness. And in the end, it was Amira who walked away victorious. She had broken free from the trap that had held her, and she had taken control of her life. The throne, it meant nothing to her anymore. What mattered was her freedom and her future. This is it. The battle for power has come to an end, but the war is far from over. Amira has made her choice, and now it's time to see what comes next. What will she do with her newfound freedom? Will Zayd and Omar ever recover from their defeat? And who will emerge as the true ruler of this kingdom? Hit that subscribe button now, because the next chapter is about to get even crazier. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Well, if you've made it this far, then you've seen some serious twists and turns. But we're not done yet. If you haven't already subscribed, you better hit that button now, because the shocking aftermath is going to leave you speechless. The battle may be over, but the consequences, they're just beginning. Trust me, you won't want to miss a second of what happens next. This is the end of one chapter, but the start of something far darker. The dust had settled. The palace that had been the epicenter of power, deception, and betrayal now stood eerily quiet. The grand halls, once alive with the sound of laughter and power struggles, now felt hollow. The game for the throne had ended, but the ripple effects were just beginning. Amira, the woman who had once been a prisoner in her own home, now stood at the heart of a shifting empire. The power she had longed for, freedom, was finally hers, but it came at a cost. The betrayal of her own family, the destruction of everything she had known, had left a scar deeper than anyone could see. Zayd, the man who had once promised her vengeance, was no longer by her side. After the confrontation, after her rejection, his plans had fallen apart. The world he had carefully built for himself crumbled beneath his feet. But the question on everyone's mind was, where had he gone? Omar, on the other hand, had been left broken, his empire in ruins. But for him, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far darker. He may have lost everything, his sister, his power, his pride, but no one could count him out yet. Omar was a man who knew how to survive in the most brutal of circumstances. And in the midst of it all, Amira found herself at the center. The woman who had once been powerless was now the woman everyone feared. But was this power truly hers to keep? Or would the ghosts of the past rise up to challenge her? As Amira stood at the precipice of her new life, she couldn't help but feel the weight of her choices. She had torn apart the family that had raised her, but in doing so, she had created something new, something no one had expected. Her rise to power wasn't smooth, far from it. The empire she had inherited wasn't just about riches and control. It was about managing the broken alliances, the enemies, and the power players who now saw her as a threat to their own ambitions. People who had once pledged loyalty to her brother, to Omar, now turned their eyes on her. And trust me, some of them were not happy to see her rise to the top. It didn't take long before whispers spread through the corridors of the palace. A new war was brewing, not just between Zayd and Omar, but between old friends, former allies, and the bitter enemies Amira had inherited. Even though she had taken down her brother, she had no idea the depth of the political game she had just entered. Some saw her as a symbol of hope, a woman who had freed herself from the shackles of family ties, who had taken back her freedom. But others saw her as an obstacle, a young, untested woman who didn't know the true price of power. And those enemies? They were patient. They waited in the shadows, building their own alliances, quietly undermining Amira's rule. She had to stay vigilant. She had to be smarter than her enemies, faster, more ruthless. As Amira's reign began, the shadows of the past loomed large. The ghosts of her decisions, the betrayals, the choices she had made to get to this point, all started to unravel. She had broken ties with Zayd, the man who had once held her trust. But the truth was, Amira had no idea the depth of his anger. Zayd was not the type to be discarded easily. He had been planning, plotting. And now with Amira in control, he would stop at nothing to take back what he believed was rightfully his. Zayd wasn't finished with her yet. And the worst part? Amira didn't even see him coming. But there was something else at play. Something even darker than Zayd's vengeance. As Amira dug deeper into the palace's secret archives, she uncovered documents, letters, and contracts that shook her to the core. Secrets about her own family. Secrets about her father, the sheikh, and even about her late mother. Things no one had ever told her. It turned out that her family's legacy wasn't what she had been led to believe. The empire she was now in charge of was built on lies, manipulation, and corruption. And some of the darkest secrets were about to come to light. There were whispers of hidden alliances, secret deals, and even darker forces at work. People Amira trusted weren't who they appeared to be, and there were those who had been watching her every move, waiting for her to slip up. As the walls closed in around her, Amira realized that taking the throne had been the easy part. Holding on to it? That was a different game entirely. And then there was Omar, the sheikh who had lost everything, the man who had thought he could control the world with his wealth, his power, his ruthlessness. But as Amira took control of his empire, Omar was a man with nothing left to lose. And that, my friends, was the most dangerous kind of enemy. Omar had been lying low, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He knew Amira's weaknesses. He knew her heart. And as the new ruler of the empire, Amira had unknowingly walked into his trap. Omar wasn't finished with her yet. He had one final card to play, one final move that would shatter everything she had worked for. He knew the secrets she had uncovered. He knew what she had found in the palace archives. And now he planned to use it to destroy her. But even with Omar lurking in the shadows, Amira had no idea what was coming next. She may have won the throne, but she hadn't won the war. And the cost of her victory would soon become clear. As the weeks passed, Amira settled into her new role. But nothing in the palace was as it seemed. Behind closed doors, the game was still in play. And as the power shifts continued, new enemies began to emerge from the shadows. Enemies who weren't tied to Omar, to Zayd, or even to her family. Amira had become the center of a new storm, and as she looked toward the horizon, she realized that the calm she had fought for was only temporary. The storm was far from over. Would she survive the consequences of her actions? Would she be able to hold on to the power she had fought so hard for? Or would the unseen enemies, the lies and the betrayals, finally tear her apart? The battle for control, for survival, was just beginning. This is just the beginning, and if you think you've seen it all, think again. The storm is coming, and it will change everything. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and prepare yourself for what happens next. Trust me, you'll want to know where this journey goes. Stay tuned, because the real drama is only starting. All right, you've stuck with us until now, and trust me, what happens next is going to leave you speechless. You've seen the rise, you've seen the battles, and you've witnessed betrayal, but the grand finale is here. And if you're not subscribed, now's the time to hit that button. This is it, the moment of truth, where everything crashes down. You won't believe how this ends. Let's go. The tension had reached its peak. The palace that once held all the power now stood as a mere shell of its former self. The blood of betrayal had stained its walls, and the echoes of ambition reverberated through its grand halls. Amira had taken control, but the cost was steep. She had no allies left, no family, just a throne built on a foundation of lies and manipulation. Zayd, the man who had fought for everything, had disappeared into the night, but his revenge was far from over. Omar, too, had vanished into the shadows, his mind working on his final revenge. But Amira had one thing they didn't: knowledge. She had uncovered the darkest secrets of the palace, the family, and the empire itself. But as she prepared for what was about to come next, the truth hit her like a wave. The enemy she had been fighting against, the ones who had betrayed her and destroyed everything she had known, weren't the only ones to blame. The empire she had inherited was far more corrupted than she had imagined. In fact, the entire system was built on a house of cards, and the winds of change had finally started to blow it all away. In her quest for revenge, Amira had learned something chilling. The throne wasn't meant to be hers. It had never been. She was just a pawn in a much bigger game, a game that had been set in motion long before her birth. The real enemy wasn't Zayd or Omar. It was the system, the very foundation of the empire her father had built. Just when it seemed like Amira was finally free from the webs of deception, an even darker truth emerged. She had spent years thinking that Omar and Zayd were the ultimate threats. But the true villain was someone much closer to home. As Amira delved deeper into the palace archives, she uncovered letters, documents, and hidden messages, ones that revealed the true mastermind behind everything that had happened to her. The conspiracy was more extensive than anyone could have imagined, and it involved some of the closest people she had trusted. Her own flesh and blood had been playing the game all along, pulling the strings from the very beginning. Her father's closest advisors, the ones who had been by his side for decades, had orchestrated everything. They had manipulated Amira, Omar, Zayd, and even her mother to maintain control over the throne. It wasn't just about money or power. It was about keeping a stranglehold over the kingdom for generations. And now, with her rise to power, they were preparing to take it all back. They knew that Amira wasn't fit to rule, not because she was a woman, but because she was too unpredictable, too dangerous. She had shattered their carefully constructed world, and they would stop at nothing to reclaim it. The final battle wasn't fought with swords or armies. It was fought with wits, strategy, and the realization that everything they had built was nothing but an illusion. Amira, now fully aware of the conspiracy surrounding her, had no choice but to act quickly. She couldn't trust anyone, not even the allies she had left. The palace guards, the advisors, the very people who had pledged allegiance to her were all part of the plan to overthrow her. But Amira wasn't going down without a fight. She had learned the rules of the game, and now she was playing it better than anyone. The world that had once feared her was now in her hands, but she didn't want it anymore. The empire was collapsing, its foundation cracked beyond repair. The corruption, the lies, the betrayal, it had all gone too far. And Amira knew that the only way to save what was left of her soul was to let it all burn. With a single calculated move, she dismantled the empire, revealing the truth to the world. The truth that would destroy the old order and give birth to something new. As the dust settled, Amira stood at the edge of the palace balcony, looking out over the kingdom she had once dreamed of ruling. It was a kingdom in ruins, its people betrayed, its rulers exposed. The empire she had inherited was gone, destroyed by her own hand. But in its place, a new future. A future where the power wasn't in the hands of the elite, but in the hands of the people. Amira had freed them from the grip of corruption, and in doing so, she had created a new world, one built on truth, justice, and equality. The throne? It didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the legacy she had created, a legacy that would live on, not in the palace walls, but in the hearts of the people. They would remember her, not as a ruler, but as a symbol of hope, change, and the triumph of the human spirit. But even with the victory in her grasp, Amira knew the cost. She had lost her family, her trust, and her innocence. But she had gained something far more valuable, the truth and the strength to rebuild. As Amira took one final look at the horizon, she knew that her journey had just begun. The empire was gone, but the people would rebuild. And she, the woman who had once been a pawn in the game of power, was now the architect of a new future. The final question remained. What would she do with this newfound power? Would she rebuild the kingdom in her own image, or would she tear it all down and create something entirely new? The answer, my friends, lies in the future. The end of this empire is the beginning of a new dawn, a dawn where power is no longer about control, but about freedom. And that's where we leave Amira, standing at the threshold of a new world, a world she fought for. But the story doesn't end here. The world she's left behind, it's still full of secrets, betrayals, and power struggles waiting to unfold. So if you want to see where this journey takes us next, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This story isn't over. It's just the beginning. Stay tuned for more, and thank you for being a part of this incredible journey. The world has been reshaped, but now the real test begins. Amira's first challenge as the ruler of this new empire is ensuring it doesn't collapse under its own weight. With no family left to support her, no allies who can truly be trusted, she has to rely on her cunning, her wit, and her ability to bring the people together. But the shadows of the old regime linger, and not everyone is happy with the new world Amira is building. Will she be able to unite the broken factions and create lasting peace? Or will the same forces that destroyed the old empire rise again to tear her down? Zayd has disappeared, but we all know that no man of his ambition stays hidden for long. As Amira strengthens her grip on the throne, Zayd, burned by his defeat, begins to plot his comeback. The vengeance he seeks isn't just about taking back power, it's about destroying everything Amira has built. But Zayd's return doesn't come alone. He's gathering his own army of discontented nobles and outlaws, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Will Amira be able to anticipate his moves, or will the fallen sheikh rise from the ashes to bring about a war unlike anything this empire has seen before? Now that Amira has freed herself from the shackles of her family, the real work begins, rebuilding. But the scars of the old regime run deep, and not everyone is content with the new order. The political landscape is a battlefield of its own, with old enemies looking for any weakness to exploit. Will Amira succeed in restoring order, or will her enemies drag her back into the darkness she's fought so hard to escape? The power struggles, betrayals, and hidden alliances are far from over, and the future is uncertain. But one thing is clear, Amira's journey isn't done yet, and neither is Zayd's thirst for revenge. To keep the momentum, don't forget to subscribe if you want to be the first to know what happens next. These twists and turns are just getting started, and you're not going to want to miss a single moment. And with that, the story of Amira, the empire, and the legacy of power, betrayal, and redemption comes to a close. But remember, in a world built on secrets and lies, the end is never truly the end. This chapter may have closed, but the story, it continues, hidden in the shadows, waiting for its next twist. Thanks for being a part of this journey. Stay tuned for the stories yet to be told. Don't forget to subscribe, because with every story, a new adventure begins. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep questioning, and never stop believing in the unexpected.